Being 7 o'clock, I'd like to call the meeting to order. First off, we'll do a roll call. Teresa Manganelli,
Present.
Mary Ann Galezzo,
Present.
Chris Diorio, absent. Brad Jackson,
Here.
Andy Levine.
Here.
Thanks, Andy. Joe Lovino,
Thanks. Here.
Scott Neville,
Here.
David Jamang.
Here.
Okay, just Chris is out. Next is the budget hearing. Shawshene Tech. Come on up, guys. How you doing?
Good. How about you, Mr. Doherty?
Very well, thank you.
Aye.
Can't complain. All yours, Tony.
Thank you. So I believe everybody has the books. I know they were dropped off last week, so I'm going to just kind of do a quick overview of how we've kind of restructured this and where we're
Okay.
going, and then we'll be glad to entertain any questions or concerns that people have. First page of the book, again, just a quick overview of our school committee makeup. The first page is a summary of some of the highlights. We are coming forward with a 3.75% increase for FY '25. We had 3 positions that had been funded using ESSER funds that we had to absorb. That is part of that 3.75%. We've also budgeted to add another English language development instructor. We've seen a big increase in the number of EL and former English learners that we have in our school. And we're getting to the point where the one instructor that we have dedicated to that can't handle all of the contact hours and meet the needs for those students. The other piece that we did add to this, we are looking to add another maintenance position. And our goal with this is to have somebody that kind of crosses shifts, if you will. So they're going to come in at like noontime, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so that some of those things that need to be done in our classrooms and our shop areas that we can't necessarily get in during the day, that individual will be able to stay, and then they would work till 7 or 8 o'clock at night, depending on when they start. That particular position, we started looking at what we spend on overtime for our day crew people to stay and work night events and be there for sports and activities. And we're confident that we can fund the majority of that position just with savings from overtime. So that also didn't have a huge impact on what we're looking at going forward here. So again, those are kind of the highlights, if you will. Our capital spending is down, which we'll get to as we go through the slides. Table of contents, I don't think needs any explanation. FY '25 budget process coming out of last year, we were very intentional about making sure that we were timely. I'm happy to say that all the dates on this we met, with the exception of the February 13th meeting got postponed. That was that faux snow day that everybody kind of experienced. But other than that, we met all our timelines. We've been out to one of our other communities, and we have all of the other budget hearings scheduled in the next couple of weeks. Capital budget comparison. Excuse me. You can see went down quite a bit. We had that big project last year that we had come out and we'd advocated for. I'm happy to report that that is done. It came in under budget. So again, we didn't go over on that, which is a little bit of a miracle in itself in this day and age, but so that went well. You can see that we started with almost $2 million in capital requests. We cut that down to about 1.5. We will fund just over $240,000 of that with our revolving funds, projected potential surplus, and then our Perkins grant, which is the federal money that we get for running our technical programs. Operating budget summary by department. This is a year-over-year comparison. You can see the difference. One caveat I want to put out there, when you look at like educational technology, there's a couple of them here that have gone down significantly, guidance. That is because we've kind of realigned positions. So we had people in the ed tech budget that were actually instructional staff. And we've moved them to the social studies department, the academic department that they're now assigned to. If you look at guidance, we had a school adjustment counselor position that had been budgeted through guidance, but actually works through our support services or special ed department. So some of these changes you'll see here are us trying to clean up and adjust those people so that, you know, as we flow through the budget, we can kind of, the personnel are budgeted underneath whoever the supervisor is that oversees the rest of the aspects of those departments. And like I said, you know, it's a 3.75% increase. Whoops, sorry, 1 second here. October 1st enrollment numbers, we are up 13 kids over where we were for the FY24 numbers. We have, as of last week, we have 538 applications for our freshman class. So I think we're going to see a trend, and we're going to see a bump next year based on the fact that we're looking at bringing in about 360 freshmen.
How much can the school actually hold?
What it was built for, or what we currently put in it. We can manage 1,300.
Okay.
We're probably going to be closer to 1,350, 1,375, which gets a little challenging. But again, we're trying to be very intentional about filling the freshman and sophomore classes, knowing that, you know, over the course of time, kids change their mind, families move, so that when we get to junior and senior year, we still have a pretty robust enrollment in those groups.
Okay, thank you.
So Wilmington's enrollment went up by 4 students. Again, I don't think it is a huge impact, but it currently accounts for about 24% of the students enrolled at Shawsheen. Year-over-year budget comparison, you know, those are some of the big buckets, if you will. Administration, fixed costs, instruction, building maintenance, capital projects and debt, educational technology, and special ed. Like I said, capital projects went down significantly. We don't have a really big building repair in there this year, which we had last year. And then, like I said, the ed tech budget, that was the shifting of personnel, instructional personnel out of their budget and into a different department. FY25 summary. Again, Ms. Lesko has broken out minimum required contributions in total for the district. What the capital assessment is for the district, what regional transportation aid we're anticipating. That number won't be finalized probably till, I'm going to say, late summer. Typically, it's usually, you know, August-ish, depending on how quickly they get the budget through. Chapter 70, again, like we had shared with everybody last year, we're getting $30 per kid, which is the minimum increase that the state gives. We haven't really qualified for any bump or anything based on demographics or changes in demographics. The amount assessed per the regional agreement, which gives you our total operating budget, and then you can see the total overall budget for the year. And again, it amounts to a 3.75% increase over FY24. Little comparison with the required minimum contributions, and I'm sure all of you have heard this at this point, but in talking to all of our town managers, there seems to be an approach from the state level to push more of school funding back to the local level. And there has been, I won't call it a significant increase, but there's been a marked increase in the required minimum contributions for all of the towns in our district. And from what I've heard from talking to other superintendents and the town managers, that kind of seems to be the approach that this administration has taken at this point in time. So, again, the next page here, which I believe is page 11, a comparison, excuse me, not a comparison, a breakdown of what the capital assessments break out by community, and then, you know, what the contribution is with the minimum net school spending and the operating agreement amounts. Excuse me, sorry. Page 12 has our breakdown by community. It gives the total FY25 assessment. Wilmington's number, I'm sure all of you have looked at, is $7,562,850. And again, this is just kind of a compilation of some of those previous slides. We pulled them all together so you can see them on one slide. And again, we get about $6.7 million in Chapter 70 aid, and we're anticipating about $1 million in transportation aid at this point. Total assessment comparison, again, year over year, Wilmington's has gone up. You can see the 4.82%. Again, that's kind of in the middle of the range. You can see our other communities. Burlington's I will tell you, Burlington's went down because their enrollment decreased. I think it was 14 or 15 students, so that's the only reason that theirs had that dip. But everybody else is, somewhere around that 5%. And Tewksbury's is up because we're getting more of Tewksbury students than what's in there. That's what's staying in the district. Again, just a graphical breakdown of what we spend that money on. So if you take that full budget and you break it out, like many schools, instruction is almost half of our budget. It's 49% of our request. Building maintenance and fixed costs, those are also expensive. Capital budget is only 3%. You can all look through and see the dollar figures that are associated with that. We also included a breakdown of our capital budget, how that's broken out. So the total amount, 84% of it we are asking for in our budget to our sending communities. 2% will fund through revolving accounts. 6% we're projecting as the potential to have some, if we have surplus, we'll cover that 6%. If not, that will get pushed to a future year. And then about 8% of that will fund through what we're anticipating getting for Perkins grant funding for FY25. Sorry, I can put my glasses back on. Slide 16 is a breakdown of the distribution of where those capital requests go. Again, our bond debt and safety, if you will, is a huge chunk, 37.51% of our budget. Maintenance is the second largest one. And again, I know we talked about this last year. We got a building, it's 54 years old. We are running into, I don't want to call them issues, but we're running into concerns with mechanical systems and keeping them up and running and making sure that we're trying to be proactive and we don't find ourselves in a situation where we have a huge repair that we have to try to fund or come forward and ask for funding for.
Have you applied to MSBA?
We have, yep. And I actually have a draft on my desk that the facilities subcommittee will be reviewing. And I'm anticipating that they're gonna request that we put in another one this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And what is that for?
So, I mean, we're putting it in as kind of an open request. They can come back and say it's a renovation expansion. They can come back and say that they'll just renovate the current building. They can come back and say that they recommend building a new facility. But that takes months, years. Once you get into that pipeline, there's a process for you to do a study. You have to bring in somebody. They have to make recommendations. The MSBA has to look at it. And then what they do is they come back with a series of options and they say, if you go this route, this is what we'll pay for. If you go this route, this is what we'll pay for. Again, if and when we ever get to that point, to me, that's a conversation to have with our sending communities and say, here's the options that MSBA has put out there. What makes the most sense for us as a district and where do we want to go with this?
Yeah, because we're going through that now.
Are you? Yeah.
Yeah. And when did it start, Mary? 3 years ago, was it?
Yeah, about that now.
It was about 3 years ago. So it is a long
It is.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, I have a question.
Yeah, Marion?
Do you need approval from all the sending communities Board of Selectmen, correct?
For,
To put in for the MSBA?
no.
'Cause I
It's-
know one of their denial letters stated that.
So we are considered our own regional school district, and there's different rules for regional school districts. So the only thing that we need is the majority vote of our school committee. We don't
Why did
need
they quote that in the denial letter, that you need to
our
go?
denial
Yes.
letter. I don't know which one. I don't know what you're referring
The
to.
December 23rd, it said that you should go to your local sending communities and get the authorization for an SOI. It said it right in the MSBA letter.
The only thing I can think of is that that's kind of a form letter that they send to everybody. But when you read through the submission guidelines, it's very specific as to what you have to do. as a regional school.
You might wanna talk to the person who wrote the letter and
Okay.
ask them why that's in there then.
I will follow up. Yep. Thank you. Okay. Slide 17, again, salary distribution. Slide 18, we tried to include some more information about enrollment trends. And Ms. Lesko put this together. She did a nice job with the color coding here. You can see that there has been, in Wilmington's enrollment in Shawshene has kind of steadily increased from a low of about 231 in 2019 to the 318 that we're anticipating, well, not anticipating, that we use to build this particular budget. Again, if you go to slide 19, here's a little bit of a breakdown in history of what we've received for transportation aid, for Chapter 70 transportation aid, and then the difference year over year as far as what the state has given us to help offset the cost to our sending communities. There's a rather unexciting graph on slide 20. You can see that that's been pretty flat. We haven't seen much of a bump from the state in any of our sending communities. And then what we tried to do this year, just to give people a little historical perspective by community, starting on page 21, there's a breakdown of all 5 of our sending communities for the last 10 years, what the October 1st enrollment was, what the assessment was to each one of the communities. And again, some of that was captured in that earlier graph, but this just breaks it down a little bit more if you want to look just specifically at where Wilmington stands and what's happened.
Hi. I have a question for you. Could you please show me or explain to me how the dollars fall, how they follow a student that enrolls in the tech in the fall and leaves maybe in October, November?
That-
Based on your numbers as of October 1st enrollment. What happens to the dollars that normally travel with that student?
They don't reallocate till the following year. So
So-
there's a 1-year lag for all of those numbers.
All right, so if the state and the town sending district pay the tech
Yep.
for student A, and that student leaves and returns to the high school, we're educating them in the high school, and we're paying to educate them at the tech.
Mhm.
That's important.
It works the other way too. So when a student transfers from Wilmington to Shawshene in April, the money doesn't come back either. It's always October 1st.
Right, but how often does that happen? I mean,
We brought in 22 freshmen mid-year, so maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. I don't know how many of them are from Wilmington, but we do try to, especially freshman, sophomore year, we try to backfill as many seats as we can.
do you know how, well, that's great. Do you know how many students return to Wilmington this year?
Not right off the top of my head. I mean, I can find that out from our guidance director. I can gladly, I'll email it to Mr. Doherty if you'd
Okay.
like.
Because we know that there
Yep.
were 30 students that returned to the high school. I'm not assuming that they all came from the tech.
Yep.
And they may have been from other schools as well. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, I had to write myself a note, so I didn't forget. So to continue on, the next section gets into our capital budget. And you can see, again, we always try to project out for 5 years. We always concentrate on the current fiscal year. A lot of times we end up pushing stuff. Sometimes things will get reprioritized if a piece of equipment gets broken or there's something that's damaged that we need to replace earlier. While we don't spend a lot of time fine tuning 26, 27, 28, and 29, they are there for reference. As we move closer into those years, we will update those as we come forward. What we also try to do is we also try to fund a lot of those things through grants if possible. So we are always on the look for grants to help offset the cost of anything in that capital budget. We've been pretty successful with that. We have a partnership with a couple of outside entities. And I was just told today that the state is going to release the last batch of capital skills grants, which are another funding mechanism that we utilize to offset capital costs whenever we can. So I haven't heard what we've got or if we got anything yet, but if we do, that'll also help.
The FY '26 capital budget looks pretty healthy.
Hopefully, we can pick a few of those things off there before we actually get to that
Do we
conversation.
get a choice?
Do you get a choice?
Do we get a choice in picking them off?
Maybe. And then as you go into, yep, sorry.
While we're still
Yep,
in capital.
Yep.
So the health, the new health wing will be paid off in FY '28. Is that what that chart says on page 26? FY '28 is the last payment on the bond for the health wing.
That bond is for the athletic
That's for the
complex.
athletic
Yeah, the health wing's already paid. Yep, that's all done. That actually is paid off in FY '32. So I might have missed it from the FY '29 capital. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a good eye.
Any other questions?
Super-
Yeah, that's okay.
Subsequent pages, the 27 and 28 is a more detailed breakdown of what we're proposing for FY '25. And again, you can see under the column with the heading that's total, that is what we're asking to fund from our sending communities. Under revolving, that is what we plan on funding from those particular revolving accounts. Surplus is, again, if we have that at the end of the year, those are things that, you know, are kind of priorities to try to get done if that money is still there. And then Perkins is the final column on the right. And as you continue through, FY '26 is laid out similarly. We haven't got into where we anticipate that funding to come from because it's a little far out to try to project that for '26, '27, '28, and '29. And again, '29 is a little sparse at this point in time, but as we work closer to that, we will continue to, you know, flesh out that plan, if you will, as things come up and as we look at life cycles on things and as we find things that need to be replaced or updated, we will continue to add to that list as we go.
What is ISSN?
Internet.
Information Support Services
thank
and
you.
Networking Program and Web Development. It's the shop.
Okay. Do you have an IT director?
Yes.
Okay. You keep it up with everything?
As far as I know. As far as I know.
There's been a lot out there lately. There really has.
Yeah.
I think the town of Lancaster today had a slight error, you know, so made it rather difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I know last year we went through a whole, audit isn't the right term, but like a self-study. We had the.
Oh, the webinars?
We had the we were adding the cyber insurance to our policy, and there was a lot of digging into things and practices and policies, and I know we moved to multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there was some other recommendations that came out of that I know we've implemented as well, so.
What percent of your employees did the MFA?
We made all of them do it.
Did?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, we made all of them do it, yep.
Thank you.
Starting on page 34 is more of a detailed budget for FY '25. Just one thing I would like to point out, you know, part way down on this where it says advanced manufacturing salaries, you will see we added a little bit more detail. Last year, we had 4 positions in there. Now we've actually broken it out. It's 3 instructors and a para. And as you go through this, like we said, we had a school adjustment counselor, we had a support services instructor, and we had a para that were all being paid for out of ESSER funds. So you'll see those show up on this if there's any questions around staffing. The only other, well, there's a couple others. The one other that I'd like to point out is Ed Tech. Under salaries went from 8 in FY '24 to 5 in FY '23. And again, that was because those 3 people are the instructional technologists. They had been underneath our Director of Educational Technology. They were the only 3 instructional staff that weren't under one of our directors. So we moved them into an academic department, and they are now supervised by, evaluated by a member of the social studies department, so that they are part of kind of their peers, if you will, instead of being part of the technology department. And then I believe if you look at guidance, as far as guidance salaries go, again, the adjustment from 6 to 8 was for a school psychologist and another adjustment counselor had been budgeted through the guidance department, but reported to the director of support services and were there to provide grid services for students on IEPs. So we did move them to try to align them with the department that they were reporting to and working for. Other than that, I don't think there's any big surprises in this. I think those are really the things that would warrant the most explanation.
How many FTEs did you hire with the grants?
So
No?
we had 3 that had been funded pretty much from the start of the grant, and those are the 3 that we then rolled into this year's budget. And then starting on page 42 is projected salaries for FY '25. And that goes on for a few pages here. And then starting on page 48, we also pulled all of the Department of Education data that's provided to us that we utilize to calculate net required spending and minimum contributions and all of that other fun stuff. This is also where we pull the October 1st enrollment numbers from. So these are the numbers that the Department of Ed has certified as enrollment numbers for our communities. And as you go through, there's some additional financial information, and then it starts to break down how the foundation budget is calculated. And then there's also information in here for all of our sending communities as well, just in case you want to look and make a comparison to Bedford or Billerica or whoever you may be interested in. And in a nutshell is what we've put forward.
Okay, that's the budget. You're looking for a contingency account.
Stabilization fund, yep. Yep.
So, and why?
So, like many things that we have an OPEB account, we have an uncompensated absences account. We are anticipating having a continued need to finance maintenance and repair of that building. You had alluded earlier to the fact that MSBA is a slow process even when you get
Oh, yeah.
accepted into it.
Yeah.
So, even being overly optimistic, we're looking at, 6 to 8 years at least before we were in a renovated facility. Knowing that, we have issues with ventilation systems, knowing that we have issues with some of the drainage lines, knowing that we're at capacity as far as what we can run for power in the building. What we want to do is we want to be able to have a place where we can start to put aside money. Again, this is all contingent upon us having surplus and being able to transfer some money out of that E&D account would be the way that we're going to propose to fund this. The thing with E&D is you don't actually accrue any interest on it, and you are limited. And what we found last year, we actually ended up returning money for FY22 because we're bumping up against that cap. And again, we weren't sure exactly where we fell on all those accounts until it had been certified, and then we ended up returning, I think it was about $370,000.
342.
342.
Okay. So basically, you're circumventing the 5-town agreement by not putting it into E&D and putting it into a contingency fund.
No, it
Stabilization.
would have to go into E&D first.
Okay,
So it would have to be certified as part of E&D, and then what we would do is either, as part of our budget request, it would come out as part of the budget request to transfer money from E&D to the stabilization fund, or it would come out as a budget amendment if it was done later in the school year.
okay.
So we can't put any money in that account without going through our sending community, so it's not like,
Is it going to be a restricted fund just for maintenance, or it can be for anything?
My understanding is that once the money goes in there, it can be approved for any legal purpose, but when you read the guidance around all of this, they are saying that essentially it should be for anything that you can borrow money for. So again, that would really be capital projects and/or extraordinary repair.
Okay. Any questions from the
I
committee?
have a question.
Teresa?
So, if you're aware of these repairs that are coming up, why don't you just budget for them?
We did that last year, and our capital budget request went up $500,000, and all of the towns were upset that their assessments were up 8, 9, 10%. If we can do that, but then what ends up happening is then that burden falls directly to each one of our communities.
Right, but your communities are paying for it anyway. So, am I right in saying that we are being removed back a step from voting on or approving these items that you would be paying for through that account?
No, it would still come out as part of the budget process.
You would have to get our approval to take it out of
Yep.
the capital stabilization fund.
To take it out of E&D.
Okay, but what about the capital stabilization?
No, that's just a vote of our committee.
Would that
to
be
spend
Right,
up to the
so-
school committee,
so
or?
we
Our
wouldn't
school
have-
committee, yes, yeah.
So we wouldn't have any input once you've accumulated. So let's go back to the amount of money that you would be taking out of the E&D account
Mhm.
would normally, once it reaches a certain point, come back to the sending districts.
Yep.
Instead of doing that, you want to move it into the capital stabilization fund.
Yep.
How much, I believe Chairman Doherty asked you this afternoon, how much in the last 10 years has been returned to Wilmington?
So, my digging this afternoon, I only came up with FY '22, and you received a $66,000 credit once E&D was certified last year. But looking into the historicals, there were 3 of us digging through files because, we've had some turnover in that office, and we couldn't find another credit, but if we do, we'll double check again.
Okay.
It wasn't in Munis, we only had one payment to the town of Wilmington to have a check cut. So I went through all the historicals, and there was never another refund check.
Okay, so then that tells me that you never actually hit the cap, and nothing would have gone into the capital stabilization fund,
We can,
except for that 1 year.
we can transfer money out. So again, we maintain that E&D fund because we don't have another place to go for extraordinary repairs of building maintenance. So we're kind of using that at this point as our stabilization fund. We can transfer any amount that we want out of that with the permission of our sending communities. So again, we could potentially come back next year, again, this year we want to establish it, that's all we're asking for. We could come back with next year's budget and say, our E&D's been certified, we want to move $300,000 from E&D into the stabilization fund. My concept of this, and I think the committee's concept of this, is over a period of 3 years, 5 years, we hope to be able to have some money in there to, one, potentially help offset the cost of a feasibility study if we do get into MSBA. And if we don't, then that's money that then we can start to rely on so that we don't have to come back and ask for half or $750,000 at a whack to do some major repairs.
All right, so, excuse my ignorance, are you basically cleaning out the E&D account?
That's not our intent. We want to move some
I'm
smaller
not sure how you're
points.
accumulating all this money
So
over a period of time.
E&D can be 5% of our budget, and that's been built up over years. So, that's all we can keep, and then when we hit 5%, whatever's left has to be credited back to our communities. So what we're proposing is, instead of leaving it at that 5% all the time, once it's certified, maybe our target's 3% in that account, and then whatever the difference is gets moved into the stabilization fund.
So, okay, I see what's going on. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And, Scott?
So you talked about your 3.75% increase, which is great. But it includes your capital costs, which have gone down pretty significantly. I mean, it's a big decrease. So for Wilmington schools, their capital's separate from, so we see they're increasing their operating budget. So I, quickly do the math. So your operating costs are actually increasing 4.86%. And last year they were 6.35%. So in Wilmington, we've asked the schools to keep their operating budget increase to 3.75% for the last 2 years. So how do you justify us asking, the Wilmington community to keep it lower, but you've extended it multiple times now above that?
Again, I mean, we're looking at, I think the big reason for that is the absorption of those 3 positions. Last year, we also added positions, but it was based on what we saw as a need: an additional guidance counselor, an additional special ed teacher. So as our population has changed and morphed, what we're finding is, in order to provide services to that population of students, we have to bring on, again, people that have that background and that lens to help support those students.
And I understand that, but Wilmington's facing the same thing. And from my understanding is that the lower elementary level require a higher cost of student support services many times than a high school program. So they're getting hit with it and still maintaining that lower budget.
So I don't know what Wilmington's percent of special ed is, but ours is about 30%, which I believe is significantly more than any one of our sending communities. So, I'm sure that that's accurate. We also service more kids with more needs. So again, I get that. I mean, all of our sending communities, I think, are kind of in the same place where they're trying to hold to the line, if you will, and hold people accountable. Again, this is what we're looking at to provide level services to our students. Beyond that, I mean, that's kind of how we're coming at this.
Okay. If you don't mind,
Go ahead.
another question. The transportation state aid that you get. So last year it was budgeted for $950,000. This year we moved up to $1 million. The cost of transportation last year was 1.6 million, a little over 1.6 million, and you received back, I think on page 19 it says 1.39 million.
Yep.
So you budgeted for 950,000, received back 1.39 million. So can you just explain how that process works? Because
So
it's a 45% jump over what you budgeted there.
we typically try to, and again, this is one of those moving targets with the state. And again, this is the governor's proposed budget that came out. What we find is that transportation reimbursement is the thing that usually takes the first hit. So we do try to be a little, we try to have a little buffer in there, because some years they'll come back, by the time it goes through the House and the Senate, it comes back, it's 50% funded instead of the 80% that was in the governor's budget. So we're trying to make sure that we have the resources to cover the costs.
Okay. So where, how much of the cost do they typically cover? I don't understand, and it's, my own ignorance here, of how they get, from your costs of 1.6 to they gave back, just under 1.4.
Right. So the 1.6 is what we have a contract with the busing company for. The 1.3 is gonna depend on what that final percentage is set in the state budget.
Okay.
And again, that won't come out till
Yeah.
July or August or whenever it is. So that's kind of a moving target.
Okay. Thank you.
Why wouldn't you budget what the cost of the contract is for fiscal year '25?
Well, again, that puts the burden back on the sending community. So we do have a transportation revolving fund. So we try to use the money in that revolving fund to make up the difference between those two numbers. So this is kind of our best estimate of what we have and what we can provide, what we anticipate getting from the state to get to that total number. So we're trying to reduce that number as much as we can.
How many revolving funds do you have?
A lot. A lot of shops have revolving funds because they service the community.
Yep.
We hold all the student activity accounts
Yep.
at Shawshene through our Citizens Bank account. And then we have our just,
Off the top, yeah.
like cafeteria revolving
There's
that supports
athletics,
that.
there's Yeah,
Yeah.
culinary, automotive, I mean,
Okay.
there's.
Graphic arts, any shop that services the community will automatically have a revolving account.
Do you have any carry forwards from the previous fiscal year?
For revolving accounts?
No, any account, on your line items. Do you have carry forwards?
Encumbrances?
Yeah.
Yes, yep, this year, we started the year with about $1 million encumbered. That was spent with POs that just hadn't cleared yet or debts that hadn't been paid.
Okay,
So, yes, we did have carryover.
okay, so you did.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good question. How does the evening school interact with the day school?
So that is also run as a revolving fund. So the evening school is self-funded, outside of the director that we pay, who is also our, community outreach person, who is also, our marketing / social media person. So, outside of her salary, the cost of those courses are paid for by the tuition that they collect.
Okay. So nothing goes to E&D or anything else like that? Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, could I request a list of all of your enterprise funds, revolving accounts?
We can get that for you. Yep.
Thank you.
Do you want student activity, everything?
No, like the miscellaneous ones that have very little money, you don't need to
Yeah,
include those.
okay,
but-
the major ones?
Yeah, anything
Sure.
over, a certain dollar amount, you'll see the break, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Between minor little things and then as they become more significant.
Yep.
I just would like to take a look at the significant ones.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
We can do that.
So just to get back to your warrant article on the capital stabilization fund, I personally don't support it. At town meeting, if any money is taken out, it needs a 2/3 vote by the town meeting. I have an issue with just one board making that decision for multi-million-dollar projects. And I know that's the way the law is written for capital stabilization funds for regional districts, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I just can't support it with, I mean, if you have a failure, I know you have to come back to all the member sending communities, but or it's still the sending communities money, and I just have a real issue with a select people making that decision versus a town meeting vote.
Mr. Fieri, you had, you,
Yeah, I just was gonna follow
School committee.
Snell's question.
I'm sorry?
The operating budget with 4.7%.
the only thing is, can you go to the microphone so they can hear you at home? And please state your name and address.
Charlie Fiore, I'm the chairman of the board of school committee board. I just wanted to address Mr. Neville about the 4.7 increase as opposed to the others. I think another fact that you guys and girls have to think about is it's a Volk school. There's a lot of material costs that, like the regular schools don't have, and everybody knows how much material has gone up. So that's another part of the puzzle as far as why, along with the added teachers and the special service and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brad?
Charlie, what's, Charlie's, I'm on my mind these days. What's the COLA in the STA contract for this year?
For FY
For
'25,
next year, yeah.
2.75.
And that's that's your increase across the board?
Yep.
I did some quick calcs on admin, so that's what you're doing for admin too, 2.7.
Yep. Yep.
Just in terms of comments, it's very difficult to compare a K-12 school system with a regional vocational school district, in my opinion. Not only are there maintenance, not only are there transportation, but school maintenance is the responsibility of the regional school district, where that cost is part of the town budget in Wilmington. They have the cost of health insurance in their budget. They have to separately insure their employees, where there's a separate line item that we typically hold harmless from our guidelines because it is so volatile. So this is I have always seen this, and I have obviously become less objective about it over the past few years, but I do see this as an apples and oranges comparison, honestly. But I do think it's important for us to remember that. This is a fully loaded cost, and a very high one. I mean, the cost per pupil is extraordinarily high. There's no doubt about it, and they'd be the first to tell you that. But it is a fully loaded cost versus where the Wilmington Public Schools, there are other pieces that support, they gotta plow their own parking lots, they gotta, so all that stuff. So just in terms of history, I wanted to share that thought.
Mr. Chairman, just,
Yes.
and again, I completely respect your perspective. Just one thing that I did want to add is, I mean, Wilmington has 2 votes on our school committee. I mean, they are 20% of our makeup. So again, any spending that would happen would be through, I mean, they're elected representatives from your or maybe they're appointed, I'm not sure, from your community.
elected.
They're elected. So, I
Right,
mean,
they're elected,
that is
they're elected, and like you just stated, there's 2 out of how many?
10. Yeah, 2 out of 10. Yeah.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the public?
9 and 3 minutes.
You know,
I'm kind of disappointed that we have a screen here and the budget wasn't on the screen, and there's no books for the public to be able to follow along. Appreciate if you give me one, if be kind enough. Thank you.
I didn't realize you were back there.
So I did some calculations.
Your name and address?
I'm just going to remain anonymous. I just don't want to use up all my
Your name
time.
and address, please.
My name's Kevin McDonald. I think you know me. All right. For the budget, it looks like $7,562,850. I divided that by 318 students, and I come up with just under $24,000, $23,782.54. And I was actually just talking to somebody today, and they told me that private school, Austin Prep, is $24,000 a year now. I heard you talking about some HVAC systems and that sort of thing needing attention, but I'm aware that the carpentry class goes out and builds houses in the communities, and it's my understanding that you actually have an HVAC department. If the carpentry people are going building houses, how come the HVAC people aren't working on your HVAC system and bringing that up to top notch? And I'd like to reserve my time while he answers it.
Go ahead.
Again, those aren't student-friendly projects. I mean, we're talking about, bringing in cranes, bringing in rigging companies, bringing in, you're talking about moving materials in ductwork sections that weigh, either thousands or tens of thousands of pounds. As far as having the carpentry kids go out, they are building, single-family, under, 12 or 1,500 square feet homes. When we send them out to do projects, they're matched to the skills and abilities that the kids have and the resources that we have within the building to do that. What we're talking about for those HVAC systems, we can't support. Another example that I've shared in other communities, we have a lot of collapsing drain lines underneath our floor. To fix the drain lines themselves isn't an issue. All of the tile was put down with asbestos glue. We cannot have kids removing asbestos tile. We can't have anybody removing asbestos tile. We're going to spend tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on abatement costs before we can actually start to do any of that work. And
Why-
again, whether that fits
Why are the drains collapsing?
they're 54 years old.
There are buildings that are 100 years old in Boston, but I'm just asking you, has anybody told you if it was improper materials, if there's a water problem causing erosion or sinkholes? What are the pipes made out of that they're actually breaking?
They're cast iron. They've been underground for half a century.
Okay. And so it looks like there's 318 students from Wilmington at the Tech. Can you tell me the amount of students from each other town?
Yeah, hold on one second.
Actually, Mr. McDonald, it's in the book.
It's in the book.
Oh, it's in the book? Actually, maybe for the audience that doesn't have a book and doesn't have the screen, would you be kind enough to tell it to the audience?
Yeah, for FY '25, we have 39 students from Bedford,
39?
39 from Bedford, 470 from Billerica, 118 from Burlington, 363 from Tewksbury, and then 318 from Wilmington.
Do you have any idea why Bedford and Burlington are so dramatically less than the other towns?
I can give you my opinion on that. And my opinion is that it really hasn't been, the recruitment piece hasn't been done in those communities the way it's been done in some of our other sending communities. That has changed. I can tell you that we have almost 40 applicants from Bedford for next year's freshman class. We've done some intentional things. We've brought some of the 8th graders over. I'll extend the offer in this meeting. I'd love to have the Wilmington 8th graders come over and tour our facility. But we've brought Bedford in, we've brought Burlington in, we've brought the kids from Hanscom in. We're in conversation with another community about doing the same thing with their students next year. We are trying to make sure that kids are making an informed choice. And to me, part of that is coming in and seeing what we do and how we do it and how our building's laid out and what goes on in our programs day to day. So we are making an intentional effort to try to raise those numbers.
Mr. McDonald, you've got a minute.
And do you have any grant writers? I'll reserve my other time.
We do. We have a grant manager. Yep.
A grant writer or a grant manager?
Her title's grant manager, but she does both. Yeah.
And can you share with us the types of grants that she writes for?
So again,
Or the ones that have been successful also?
I mean, we get Title I, we get Title III, so she's in charge of collecting and submitting all the documentation. Perkins, well, it's an allocation to us. You actually have to send in a plan and get your plan approved every year. So she collects the information and documents stuff around that. When we have gotten capital skills grants in the past, which is money that comes from the state and the Department of Education, she's the point person on that. We get some mental health money, I think, last year and this year to help offset some costs and to add some capacity in some of our departments. MyCap, which is a career planning, career mapping kind of thing. So it's really across the board depending upon what's out there. And her and I meet every 2 weeks, and she comes into my office and she says, these are the things that are pending, and this is what's coming up. And we talk about, does this fit, and is this something that we're trying to do as a district? And if it is, we pursue it, and if it's not, then we look for something else.
And
Thank you
do
for
the
your comments, Mr.
do the
McDonald.
grant writers share?
Mr. McDonald, thank you for your comments.
Well, I just had a little more time left.
No, you're done.
No,
No, you're done.
no, this is a lot of money. I also agree with Ms. Galizzo that I'm against that a stabilization account on the
Mr.
per on the.
McDonald, you're done.
It says that it's
Mr.
good for
McDonald,
any
you're
legal
done.
any legal purpose.
Mr. McDonald,
it's
you're
not
done.
HVAC.
You're done.
Mr. Chair, would you like to entertain approvals for
Yes,
these minutes?
yes, let's start with that.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 6th as
Is-
presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Pass. February 8th, entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes, February 8th.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
I believe this one, I had reached out to Tommy about, was this the one, the other business, I think that's listed on this one, is from a different meeting?
Yes.
So as long as we just remove that section on this, or what's written there.
Approve as amended. Discussion? Further?
The February 13th was the one I took it out of.
Oh, it should be in the February 13th, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
February 8th is the one it should be removed from.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Check.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Abstaining, I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay.
so.
Next is February 13th, entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes of February 13th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. February 27th,
Motion to approve the minutes of February 27th as presented.
is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Mr. Chair, I was not present at this meeting.
All in favor? Opposed? Passes. February 29th, I was not at this meeting.
And I was chairing it, so I'll take another
Entertain a motion.
motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passes. Sorry about that. He's been quite vocal. Do you guys have any questions for us?
I don't think so.
No? You did a great job.
Thank you for
Okay.
your time.
No, thank you. Thank you. Came in on a nice timely basis.
Thank you.
You guys have a great night.
You too.
Night.
Take care. Take care, Charlie. Next item on the agenda is the town warrant. Has everyone read it? Any questions on it, or? Because we go to
Actually,
public hearing next
Mis-
week.
Mr. Chair, could I make a suggestion, if we could, to the agendas? This agenda has March 19th indicating the joint public meeting with the Planning Board and Finance Committee, but we also have a meeting then on February 21st of
Yeah,
the
where we
Finance
vote.
Committee, and people should be aware of that. This is when we vote on all the warrant articles
Yeah,
and make our recommendations for approval or disapproval.
good point.
And although it is an open meeting, we won't take any comments,
No.
but people are more than welcome to, sit in the audience and listen to our deliberations.
Yeah.
Yeah, Thursday, the
Next Thursday.
21st
Yeah.
at 7 o'clock. Has everyone read the warrant, or, yeah? Any comments on it, or questions on it, or
It's very short.
need to clear up before we go? Before we go into the public hearing. It gives us time to review it. No comments, then? Any new business? No? Entertain a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Opposed? Passes. Thank you, everyone.